I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. Welcome to the Business Lockdown, Mr. Matt Stay. Matt joins us as a man that certainly wears many hats, a martial artist, a business owner, an author, to say the least, a man of many talents. Welcome to today's Business Lockdown, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me along.
And welcome to 2021. I'm not sure that's for me to welcome you to our year, but I'm really excited to drill down and explore what the world, in your world looks like ahead, as and are we able to kind of make any plans and judgments? That's going to be an interesting topic of conversation. But we are in January, and the theme for us on the Business Lockdown for January is a new year, new you. Now, with that in mind, under normal non-COVID circumstances, it's a month where people are buying gym memberships and starting, buying yoga mats and hitting new diets and doing dry Januaries. And so I'm really eager to chat with you today. Clearly, from the martial arts background, you must have a shitload of discipline, which I'm eager to find out more about as well, and hopefully inspire me somewhat. But what I'm eager, the first question of the episode, Matt, is I'd like to know, what are your proudest moments in professionally and also personally? And with our theme looking at discipline and motivation, I'm eager to drill down on what was at play with your proudest moments. How much motivation was needed and discipline for those proudest moments?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because you can look at it in several ways. So you can state the obvious and say, birth of my child, that sort of thing, and that's fine, and that's not a get out of jail free card. But I do sometimes think that maybe that could be like an easy response, so that you don't have to actually question it too much. There are a number of different factors, really, which I would say that I'm proud of, that don't seem like much to the outside world, maybe, but I think are pivotal in the way that I live my life. And one of the from a professional point of view, I think it was walking away from the protection of a salaried income and the knowledge that every month there would be a set amount of money hitting my bank account, and that was a nice, comfortable place to live in, and giving that up and making a conscious decision that I was going to go through hardships to actually get what I wanted in life. So I think that was a really pivotal key moment, and I am very proud of that moment because it took a lot of doing. There was a lot of sleepless nights in and around that, But as I mentioned to people, not as a sort of wallowing point of view, but my father committed suicide when I was in my late teens. I'd gone through a difficult breakup, so on and so forth, and so over the years, my value system and view on the world has sort of been built in and around that. And so, and so because of that, I looked at my value system. I looked at what I wanted to do in the day, and I looked at how I wanted to live my life, and I weighed that up against some of the more comfortable things about having a salary, so on and so forth. And that was, what was that now? That was 10, 11 years ago when I made that decision consciously that I was going to pursue that. And and that sort of leads us to today. So I suppose that's both personal and private in some way, isn't it?
I was going to say, you've wrapped that up, and I'm really eager to just. I've got a number of questions now in my head on both of those. And first of all, I'll start on the professional side. Just give us insight in what were you doing? So what was the day-to-day job, the job of security, if I'm right on making an assumption that it paid the bills and it was a safe and secure job and career. What did that look like, and how long a process was it before you gave that in to take the risk? And what was it? What did that look like in terms of the penny dropping or light bulb moment? Was it from frustration or just a burning desire? Give us a bit of insight into that process, what that looked like.
Okay, well, essentially there was like everything, there's a convoluted long way around the houses, as in I didn't just wake up one day, there it was. So we went through the martial arts, we went into door work security as a way to sort of test what I thought I knew. And I always say about that, it's like, you know, as a young man, if I gave you a bright red Ferrari that could do 200 mile an hour, you'd want to try 200 mile an hour. There's no point not. And so, you know, when you've trained extensively as a young man and you're full of vim and vigor, you want to see what that looks like. So so we went into security, learned an awful lot of stuff through that and worked my way through that. So went into head doormanship, went into event management side of things, went into, and eventually settled as operations manager. And that's where, you know, that's where I was, which was a 24-hour sort of occupation. It came with obviously the salary and the perks and the credit card and everything else. And so that was a relatively comfortable state of affairs. Plus I was working in security as well, and bringing in a substantial amount from that on the side as well, because I still enjoyed doing that. And so that was, yeah, that was very comfortable, but it was a 24-hour existence. My phone could go at 4 a.m. and I'd have to just give up whatever I was doing, whether that was sleep, didn't matter. I had to go and firefight problems. So all of the time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, I was tethered to that phone and firefighting problems for whatever came up. So that really sort of reached a head on one of the occasions was a friend's wedding where I was supposedly having 48 hours off and didn't quite happen. The phone rang and problems needed to be resolved. And so so I sat and I thought about it, and I gave it a lot of contemplation as to what I actually wanted my life to be and how I wanted to, you know, wake up in the morning. And I decided that, you know, all the things that I was doing, the martial arts, the security, the ops manager role, all of those sorts of things. And then it was a case of, well, do I actually want to do all of those things till I'm 70? Do I want to grind myself into the ground doing those things? Or do I want to actually pursue some hopes and dreams and ambitions, you know, such as writing and things? And so I basically did that. I invested my entire sort of savings into the martial arts gym, into setting all of that up. I didn't go to anyone with a business plan or a loan or anything. I just threw everything into it, and that allowed me to do my writing. That allowed me to have a quality of life, which is more important to me than literally anything else. Is that quality of life? You know, we only, obviously, given the current situation, things are a little more difficult and challenging, but essentially, I want to go to bed at night having done the things I enjoy doing that make a difference to me and mine. And that's fundamentally where that shift came about. It was, you know, it had to be what was going to be best for me.
Love that. And straight away, so I'm picking up, you've got, you know, have you put your money in, and there was a business into a physical martial arts studio. Have you still, that's a bricks and mortar business. Dare I ask, is that still around today? Because I mean, I know if the answer is yes, then I know there's some challenges that we can certainly discuss and share with the audience.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is I still have the gym, and it's still a fully working gym in the sense that everything is set up to do so. Unfortunately, at the moment, under the current conditions where we are, we can't open the doors at all. And during the course of the past sort of 10, 12 months, like a lot of people, you know, this industry has been hit incredibly hard, unbelievably challenging. And it's very, very difficult to watch a lot of my fellow instructors and martial artists that have done absolutely everything above and beyond that's required of them to make it as absolutely safe as they possibly can, to then have it, you know, taken away from them and shut down again. Well, shall we say, some fast food joints and things like that are still, you know, the world at the moment is a very peculiar place, which we could really get into, but probably not the wise thing to do. So suffice to say, yes, at the moment the gym is closed. Again, it's then how you approach that sort of problem, because you can look at it and say, oh, well, that's it, it's terrible, that's the end of the line kind of thing, and there's nothing more I can do. Or you can look at it and say, well, actually, how can I turn this into some sort of opportunity? Now, for the past few years, I've had online courses, I've had video content, I do a lot of social media stuff, as you with regards being out and present in that. And so the online courses and things have really sort of come to the fore. Now, I'm not one for wasting, and this is not wasting, I shouldn't use that word, But I'm not one for spending 4 hours a night teaching half a dozen people in their living room day after day and getting back onto that hamster wheel grind. And I know a lot of instructors are doing that, and that's what they need to do to get through. And that absolutely hats off to them for putting all the effort in. For me, I've decided to run a slightly different tack. So I've said essentially what we're going to do, we've turned the gym into a recording studio. We've made it so that I can actually go in there. I can lay down lots and lots and lots of online course content in lots of guises, whether that be subscription groups, models, or standalone courses, or even things that then can be embedded into other people's courses as add-ons. And so all of those things have now become, if you like, the main reason for the gym. And so it's, rather than saying we've just got an empty space that is costing a lot of money, we've gone, actually, we can really put this to work now and make it the best that it can be for this particular outcome.
That's amazing. And I'm curious, when you're talking about, so you're using a martial arts space now as a studio for online courses, is that purely staying within the martial arts world, or right? Interesting. So tell us a little bit about that. So what courses? And I mean, is that a big range? Have you got a certain niche, or what does that look like? I'm curious.
Well, I'm just on the verge of launching a few different things. Hence, what we've been doing for the past sort of 6-7 months, putting all that together. And so, no, it's become essentially a recording studio, for want of a better word. I mean, you're very aware yourself of the levels required for a good standard of audio, for a good and these things these days can't be ignored. In regards to, if you want to have a good quality of product, you need to have these things in place. So yes, you can bang something off your phone now, because phones are really, really clever and it can be done. But it's better to have a actual space where you can do these things. And so essentially that's what that has become. So we have a full gym with all the bags and all the kits and all the toys and everything else. So we can look at that side of things. But then there's also a sort of classroom-based area as well, where we can present things such as how to self-publish books, how to monetize podcasts themselves as a guest, how to be a guest, how to use social media correctly, all kinds of different things like that, how to present yourself well, how to perform on camera. There's a whole raft of things that in this day and age, there's a new skill set, isn't there, that's coming through. And there are people that are naturally gifted towards that. There are people that have got a head start, as in they have been working on online products and delivering in this space for a number of years. But there is an awful lot of people that are desperately trying to catch up at this point. And those are the people that really that are the ones that need the help and need a bit of guidance, so that they don't make the same mistakes that we all make.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spoke, the initial question was about your transition, so your proudest moment, and then that transition into business. And you mentioned it's like there's a 10 or 11 year journey there. Give us a little bit of insight, because we're going to naturally talk about January and how people normally spring into step and have all of these New Year's resolutions in play. I'm curious, over those 10 or 11 years, Matt, how much is discipline? What does that look like for you in terms of discipline and motivation to get you through? Because it's safe to say the business world and the business journey is certainly a challenging one, and whether can often be on not only a daily basis but an hourly basis. And how generally over those 10 or 11 years did that look like to you, and how much did discipline and motivation play to get you to where you are to date?
Yeah, the discipline is something that is more about really being a self-starter and being resilient.
Right.
If you can achieve both of those things, then to a degree a lot of it falls into place. That resilience is definitely a factor. It's interesting, because I didn't set out 10 years ago to be where I am today and having this conversation. So I didn't say I'm going to be this, and this. It's definitely been this sort of natural progression, where I've done the one thing that's gone into another thing, that's gone into another thing. And each of these doorways that you step through offer another set of opportunities or another pathway that you can take. And so it really has been that sort of natural progression. So I wanted to write the book. That was one of the big things. And I'd sort of hung back on that for a while. I procrastinated. I'd even half written it and put it in a drawer for a few years because I told myself it was a waste of time and absolutely nobody would care. And so that was again quite a big push for me, because it was like, well, actually, I want to do this. So took it back out the drawer, spent a bit of time on it, got it out there, and it was actually, surprisingly well received. It got to #1 at Amazon a couple of times, and the industry sort of embraced it and said it was well done and things. And so that was really invigorating. I think that's probably the good word for it, invigorating, because it showed me that you could actually do it, and you didn't have to, you didn't have to have a background in writing or this or anything else. You could actually just do it if you wanted to. That's one of the beautiful things about the world we live in today, is that literally you can find out how to do most things now. If you've just got, if you want to do it enough, the information is out there to find. And that's a real great opportunity for the moment.
And yeah, tell us a bit about what is it? My journey up the mountain. Is that's give us an insight. Is it My Journey Up the Mountain? We've got
yeah, that's actually the second book.
Modern Samurai's at first, right?
That's right. Yeah. So long story short on that, obviously during the years in security, during the years doing close protection stuff, and you pick up lots of stories and lots of anecdotes, and there's lots of interesting sort of things that happens, and people are genuinely interested, and quite often they were interested but they were misinformed. So you had this view that all bouncers security looked like this, and couldn't get a real job and all the rest of it. And there's an element of truth in that. I mean, I'm not the smallest chap and all the rest of it, but I kept finding myself answering similar questions to people. And so I thought, I want to write this down. It's in me that I want to get this out. And I wanted to tell the stories because they're good stories, but I also wanted to break down some of those misconceptions. And I felt that for me, it was necessary to write a book that wasn't like a hard man book. You get those, you get those gangster dudes, and it's all about how they beat this person up and all the rest of it. And I desperately didn't want to do that, because the vast bulk of those roles, that's not it. That's not what it's about. And so I wanted to sort of look into that, and I wanted to offer a behind the curtains look at an industry that is misunderstood quite a lot. So that's really where the impetus for that came from, and I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if I could actually do it. And
I love that personal challenge side of it, and that's coming. It's constantly coming through with your journey. Is that I just threw everything at it. I just was determined that was a decision that I was going to make, and I made it, and then the rest is history. And it's almost that decision is made, and nothing else matters then, because it's going to work, right? So yes, I love that about you, Matt. Yeah.
There has to be that bullheaded nature about anything, because it's so easy to get derailed by the world at large, or just even something day to day and mundane can derail you if you allow it. So so as an example of that, I said, and this is how I write all my books, by the way, and I've done a few now, is I say I am going to write 2,000 words every day without fail, from start to finish, until that is done, right? I portion off an element of my day, I sit myself down and I write. If it's absolutely rubbish, I metaphorically screw it up, throw it in the bin and start again. But I've written 2,000 words. And that's basically how I've done a couple of books now, is I've forced myself to do that every single day without fail, 2,000 words. And that's, it's just getting into something with a bite, isn't it? The whole is usually quite a massive thing. So you say, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a bite, and then I'm just going to take another bite, and so on and so forth.
That's and how long is that process? So you're sitting down and you're writing 2,000 words a day. And I also there was a few years ago. Again, it was probably New Year, motivation, drive to hit the gym, and of course, then there's inevitably times where you're more tired because of work or whatever that might be at play. And I remember it was something like, still turn up, and if you give 70%, that's a hell of a lot more than not turning up at all. Because there's one way to guarantee of giving 0% and achieving 0%, and that's not turning up at all.
Yeah.
I think that's relate that to you is just, I'm going to do 2,000 words no matter what, and if it's no good, I've turned up and I've give it a go, and I'm sure, no doubt, that the next day you write is you will benefit from the previous day's ideas or mistakes. I mean, 2,000 words a day. So give us insight into how long then that journey is of from zero to book being finished. How?
The first book, that was about 60,000 words. So you can sort of do the math on that with regards to if you did it in line. But as we know, there's not a single journey in the world that is a direct line from start to finish. Everything that we do kind of goes around the houses and wanders off and things like that. So the book itself, it stopped and started, as I said, it sat for a while. But then when I decided that I was going to finish it, and I sort of put my mind to that, then that process then was probably about, I would say, 2 to 2.5 months to actually get it finished written. And then another probably 2 months to get it out and published in the world. Now that was, because it was my first one, that was a bit of a learning curve, and it was a few years ago now. So the way that Amazon does things is a little bit different now, but you've got to learn all these processes. So there was a little bit of trial and error. I made some rookie mistakes, as we all do. But yeah, overall, it was probably 2.5 months to finish writing it and another 2 months to get it out. The second book, that was a straightforward process in the sense that I wrote that all in one go, so day after day until it was done. So I just sat down on that one, and that start to finish, that was about 3 months. So I set myself a goal a few years ago to write at least one book a year. So far I've achieved that, and that is that's basically how I do it. I say that's part of my job, in the same way that if I was working in a supermarket, I would have to turn up, punch in, and punch out. I would have to commit that time if I was doing that. So that's the process. Is I literally punch in, I get my nice coffee, and I have at it.
I love it. And we've got Modern Samurai, and he said that's, you've lightened that up. You wanted to have a different approach to storytelling. And I've got to be honest, I'm holding back loads of questions that I would want to ask you on being a doorman, and good, bad, and indifferent. And I'm sure you'd be awesome to go and have a pint with and just chew the fat with. But how does Modern Samurai different to My Journey Up the Mountain? So what does My Journey Up the Mountain kind of cover, and how is that different to your first book?
Okay, well, the Modern Samurai is essentially based around mostly my time in security and security training and close protection, that sort of thing. Whereas My Journey Up the Mountain is essentially in and around my martial arts training and the different elements of that. So neither one of them are I was born in this year and I went to that school and then I did that and then I did this. And it's not chronological. It's not one of those sort of staggered things like that. It's literally just a blurting out of stories as I recall them. And it is, as you mentioned there about having a pint in a pub, it has been described as like a conversation with a friend in a bar kind of thing. And so it jumps here, there, and everywhere, but they're all like interesting elements to my martial arts and what I've done and how I've sort of got to where I've got. Because again, it's relative to me. There are people that have gone through a completely different journey. And some of them are really, really interesting. Some of them are super interesting, and so this was just my version of that particular thing. So, and it's never ending. It hasn't stopped. It's got to a point where the book was written and that's where it's time stamped, but the story still continues.
Love it. And My Journey Up the Mountain. So how does that differ? What's the if I'm and I've got to hold my hands up here. I've probably read 4 books since I finished school. My mind is far too active. I really struggle to absorb the information and maintain focus and concentration. But if I was to pick up My Journey Up the Mountain, from start to finish, what does that journey, what would I finish that book kind of taking away? What's the feedback that you get from people who have read the book and they take forward from that?
Well, it's interesting. Firstly, let me say you can actually get these books on Audible. I would, however, add a caveat to that, which I probably shouldn't say, but I'm going to anyway, which is we actually employed somebody else to read them, so it's not my voice, and that's kind of weird because they're telling my story. I'm still not used to that a few years later. Nonetheless,
are you admitting here you don't like the sound of your own voice? Right, is that the case?
No, it's just weird hearing my life come out of somebody else's mouth. I mean, when The Rock gets to play me in a film, that's going to be okay. I'll live with that. Right?
You'll take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. So it's interesting because even though it's based around martial arts, there's a lot of, if you like, life lessons within that and things that I learned through the practice of martial arts and some of the challenges that I faced throughout that. And it's also a look at the world at large and how people interact and people relate to one another, because the vast majority of the things that I have learned and had the blessings of being given were taught to me through martial arts, and then that led to security, and that led to a very, very deep dive into human nature and all the different elements of that. When you see it in the raw, right on the cutting edge of human behavior, it's an interesting sort of place to visit and be in and around. So lots of good stuff come from that and lots of life lessons. So essentially, yeah, although it's a book about martial arts study, it's actually, I would suggest, more about sort of lessons learned, if you will.
Interesting. And you mentioned life lessons there, and we've got martial arts and discipline, and you certainly you commit, you come up with a plan, you make a decision, and you commit to it, and you follow it through. That's clear with yourself. When we're looking at, Jack, we're now in 2021. We've got more people than ever in terms of a month in a year starting new regimes and routines and trying to be fit and healthy. What pieces of advice could you offer to our audience in terms of, because we're in a COVID climate now, and the UK have now been hit with again new lockdowns and restrictions, and so I'm speaking with different people on a daily basis who are struggling, certainly with the mental health, with the sleep. It's having such a huge impact, and in a world of uncertainty right now, people are really striving to have any form of certainty and structure in place. The amount of people, mate, I've seen, me included, get a new dog, to have that something that they can focus on and have and implement a routine. What piece of advice could you provide people in terms of the importance of little tips and tricks when it comes to discipline and ensuring that the January the New Year's resolutions can have the best opportunity to continue into February and beyond?
Okay, well, I can actually give you some physical examples. So for me, like a lot of people, I made some mistakes along the way, and I'm still making mistakes. One of the mistakes that I made was I got very embroiled into the reasons why, into a lot of the different, not conspiracy theories necessarily, but a lot of the different interpretations of what was happening in the world. And that sucked up a lot of my time and energy and emotional resources as well. I was getting pinged around left, right, and center, wondering what the world was going to be. And if you imagine, like, a small boat getting sort of knocked around in the storm, that's exactly how I felt from an emotional point of view and from a and from an energy point of view. And it was like, well, we're all the victims in this, and there's nothing we can do, and we've just got to accept our fate and all the rest of it. When in actual fact, that isn't technically true. We are the victims of the wider world, of course we are, but we're also the master of our own destiny, in the sense that we can change elements about things, and that's what we need to put the focus on. So I moved away from that. I signed up for a master's degree, which is something I've always wanted to do. I left school with no education whatsoever. And I thought, this is a perfect opportunity. Everything is now delivered online. I don't have to go to campus every day. I can continue my businesses. I can fit it around my working life. And it's something that I want to do. So I signed up, and here we are. I'm now halfway through a master's degree at my age with no formal education whatsoever since 1985. So that's, that's a very real thing, in the sense that rather than sitting there and not having a way forward, find a focus and a way forward, and something that's going to, that's going to make a difference. As you said with the dog, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a fabulous dog. I'm a big fan of dogs. Myself and my dog, we go out every single day without fail. If I didn't, he'd eat the sofa. So it's not a question of choice.
So he holds you accountable. I mean, there's no choice there, is he? There's certainly no option.
Yeah, absolutely right. And one of the fundamental things that I say this regularly to people is that the dog is literally one of my gurus. He's literally somebody that I look towards to guide me in my decision making, because the dog is completely in the moment every single second of every day. There is no confusion with the dog. There's no deception with the mood that he's in. You don't have to figure out what the word fine really means. It's just, he just is. And that's a really, really good sort of life lesson and a reminder, because we'll be out in the woods, he'll be having a great time, chomping a stick, running around, and it's as if the rest of the world doesn't exist to him. And that's, that being able to touch that view of the world, I think, is magical. And yeah, I recommend to everybody, get a dog.
Yes. And when you do that, do you find that helps you switch off, or do you go the other way, where it gives you an opportunity to have clarity and ideas, have a certain space in your head where under normal working day, when you're at your desk, maybe you don't have the same opportunity to have that clarity?
Yeah, well, one of the things that really became apparent quite quickly, and a lot of people have actually flagged this up, is that when we were in the outside world and we were, free range, let's call it that, we would go from A to B, from place to place. And so we would have meetings, we would have work days, we would have commuting time in between, where we would either be in the car or on the train, but we would have time to process. And so our head would, spin everything around, and it would settle, and we'd be fine with that. Now, in the Zoom age, we don't really have that processing time as much. And that's created a lot of problems for a lot of people. And so I find that the dog walking time, my time where that's allocated, has become my processing time, and is incredibly valuable to me. Incredibly valuable.
That's, I haven't actually thought of it that way, because predominantly our experience, and I've been discovering, is that people are or maybe certainly maybe earlier on, when the pandemic came in and that lockdown and new way of working was in its infancy, was people were really relishing the extra hour and a half a day of not being on a bus or behind a steering wheel. And so then they were able to put a load of washing on, put a slow cooker on for the dinner for when the partner came home or the working day was over. And then that had a really positive impact on the week ahead, because then, they weren't then sitting down, everything being done at 8 p.m., 8:30 at night. That was now maybe even a 6, because they've been able to prep and plan during the day. And then likewise, the weekend comes, Saturday morning isn't then spring cleaning, because they've managed to get that done over the course of the week. So, and that predominantly is what I've experienced, certainly within our team and people I've spoken to. But I hear what you're saying. I haven't actually thought of it like that, where that commute, it's often the case that people complain about having to commute to work and traffic jams and de-icing the car and all of that. But I do know a good mate of mine, Paul Gibson, who's been on the show, and he made a conscious decision not to buy a car, not to buy a second car, because he wanted that half an hour commute on a bus, where he would tap into a podcast, he would write his notes, formulate the kind of ideas and plans for his day ahead. And he said it was priceless, and it was his time to zone out. you know, from leaving the family home to getting to work, from leaving work before getting to the family home. And so I hear what you're saying. And I remember when Paul was discussing that with me a while back, and it just made so much sense. And he was like, and at the end of the day, you know, but I'm not paying for a second car I don't need. So the finances benefit us as well, that we can spend on holidays or experiences with the kids and what. But so I haven't yet. I know that with Paul, but I haven't thought that we forget the importance of that. It's too easy to think of all the negatives associated with the commute, but actually there are some very important factors at play there, isn't it? They often say there's that sweet spot with a commute. Any more than a 45-minute commute, and then you're treading into murky waters, and then it being a bit of a pain in the ass on a daily basis. And likewise, anything less than 15 minutes, it doesn't give you that period to get some clarity and think. So I haven't actually considered that over the lockdown. I mean, under normal circumstances, how does that look for you? I mean, is your place of work, is the gym close by you? What's that commute look like?
Yeah. Well, the gym, the gym is literally a 3-minute walk from my house, and that was set up purposely that way.
Right.
However, I again, when we were free range, I used to travel the country delivering workshops, seminars, talking. So I would often be out and about. I mean, I spent a number of years working with a charity called Stand Against Violence, where I would deliver anti-bullying workshops, social media safety things to schools and things. And so I'd travel extensively with that and other things. So I was often in the car for long periods going around the country, which for me was a great opportunity to do sort of one of three things. One was process, as we discussed, because we do all need that time. The second thing was to get a huge amount of podcasts, audio books, that kind of thing under my belt, and I use it a lot for that. And the third one was singing along really badly to Neil Diamond or whomever, you know. So one of those three things would happen.
We've talked on previous episodes about the power of vulnerability, and I think you've just laid your cards on the table there with that Neil Diamond.
The amount of people now that are going to say, do you know what? I'm sure I've seen that guy, you know, having it large in his car, karaokeing it all the way up the motorway.
Love it. Well, I mean, we could talk forever. I'm still holding back on many questions I could ask you about dormant stories, and essentially that leads me on. I'm going to have to listen to your audiobook, aren't I? But before we wrap up and we just share where people can find you. Final question of the episode is who's your hero? Who is your hero, and is that someone that's definitely nailed on, or have you got someone who springs to mind and then you're thinking about that? So we get a variety of responses to that. I mean, how would you answer to that question?
Yeah, it's again, it's a hard one, and there are different people in different elements of that. But for one that sort of really has been influential in a lot of areas is a guy called Jeff Thompson. Now, the obvious connection there that people would assume was that because Jeff Thompson was a martial artist and a reality-based martial artist, so he was all about street and all that, that would be where the connection was. Where actually it was more a case of what he's achieved. And so, very, very briefly, just to clarify for those that don't know, Jeff Thompson became an absolute superstar in the British martial arts scene and globally. Years ago, through basically exposing, well, not exposing, perhaps not the right word, but explaining in a way that people understood the difference between real violence and the majority of martial arts and how it's portrayed, because they're not the same thing. And he did very well with that. He wrote a number of books. He even wrote sort of plays and films and things. And so he's gone on now, and now he's a very clever guy. He always was. But now lives a world completely different to that. You know, he used to work as a doorman in Coventry many years ago, and was cleaning factory floors as like a caretaker. And so essentially it's his journey and his story, and it really, really created a belief in me that things were possible.
Wow.
And that's really the important part of that, because we've got a guy that was working in a factory at a very menial level and was sloping off in his break times to write on a pad with a pen, old school, while sat on the toilet. And he wrote his first book, sat on the toilet on a pad, right? Obviously, that was rejected a million times. Those stories are obvious. But anyway, he got it out there, he got it done, it came out, he wrote several other books, and he's gone on this trajectory. And it was that story that really hit home with me, because I used to complain all the time. Oh, I'm a working class kid. I had a terrible upbringing, or in some ways, there was violence. It was woe is me. Oh God, if only I'd have been that. If only this had happened. Right. And it's really, really hard when you hear a story like that and it kicks you in the face and says, no, that's not true. That's not true. It does. Okay, you may not have had as good a start as somebody else, but you've been given all of these blessings that you can bring to bear on this, intelligence, health, physical ability. All of these things are very real gifts. So I may not have been born rich, but I was definitely born with a capability that others don't have in certain areas. And so it's a case of, that's why that was so influential, because it really hammered that home to me and changed the entire way I saw the world.
That's awesome. And I think part of that is the importance of everybody to just spend some time to explore and have some self-assessment. We had a guy called Dean Grimshaw on the show, a kind of mindset coach, and he has like 5 journals and diaries. And he has a system, and he has ADHD, so he has to have his system to give himself discipline and structure. And one of his diaries is a gratitude diary that at the end of every day he notes what he's grateful for in that day, but not also just for that day. If he's got an overall feeling and view of something to do with his life, and he just makes sure that he documents that. And it's not like he ever does anything with it, but that practice in itself of reflection. And I think that's super important for anybody to look at adopting, certainly under these troubling times, is that there has to be moments to be grateful for. That, there has to be. Yes, you might have to search harder for them some days than others, but it's that, isn't it? That same thing. You had a bricks and mortar business, and you could be looking at that it's empty, and you're waiting for somebody else to make a decision on how you can be productive and be positive within that space and that business. And you haven't done it. You attack the day and you look at the opportunities ahead. And that's really consistent with the people that we've spoken to with our guests on the show. Entrepreneurial mindsets don't sit back. The people with entrepreneurial mindsets, they don't sit back. They look at the situation and see what's at play and the opportunities. And it comes down to that, again, that drive mixed in with discipline and motivation. And it's ace, mate. We could chat forever, and it's the consistency coming through with just you're making a decision and you go for it and you make shit happen. That's an understatement for sure. I'm definitely going to be checking your audio books out for sure. Where can people find you, mate? I know geographically speaking, you're just over the river in Wales.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Beautiful part of the world. Very lucky to live there. I mean, that goes back to that gratitude thing. I do that every single day, by the way. Every morning, I actually do have 5 minutes where I list through the things that I'm very, very grateful for, and it's amazing what a difference that does make. So yeah, highly recommend that to anybody. So yeah, live just over the Wales border there, on the cusp of the Wye Valley and the Forest of Dean. Absolutely amazingly beautiful part of the world. Another reason to have the dog to go and explore it. And yeah, there's the easiest ways to find me, all the usual social media channels, either Matt State, which is STAIT, or Modern Samurai. So just for those that are interested, I don't actually think I'm a feudal warrior from ancient Japan. I realize that that's not the case. However, that was the name of the gym. When I first opened the gym, I called it Modern Samurai, and the banner and the moniker has kind of stuck, and I like it now. I think it's kind of cool.
And you are active on TikTok, so anyone on TikTok should certainly. I mean, you have got some interest. You've got following over 300,000 with weekly views hitting around 2 million. I mean, we could delve into that, but I'm purposely not going to, because I want people on TikTok to find you and discover. I imagine it's not just twerking videos that you put out there on TikTok. Would I be right in thinking of that?
Yeah, I don't do twerking videos. I'm afraid I'm of an age now where if I take my top off, I look more like a lava lamp than anything else. So no, I don't do twerking videos, but yes, I have a following of over 300,000 on there. I teach businesses and individuals how to use the platform correctly. That's something that I do now quite a lot of, and yeah, it's actually a great deal of fun. And if you look at Gary Vaynerchuk, he's literally just put out a video where he does a 5-year prediction, where he did one a number of years ago, and he's just done his latest one, and he's suggesting that TikTok is going to really take off globally and get very embedded into our way of doing things. So he said the same thing about Instagram 5 years ago, and it's proved to be true. So yeah, he's normally quite accurate. So we'll see where that takes us. But yeah, TikTok's a lot of fun. If you're a bit fed up at the moment with all the moaning that's going on say Facebook, which does happen a lot at the moment, it is quite down sometimes. You know, if you sort of want something a bit more lighthearted and a bit more cheerful, then maybe it's worth having an explore.
Awesome. Matt State, thank you so much for your time and joining us today on the Business Lockdown. Much appreciated, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.